If you're struggling with the research gap, with finding it, understanding what it is, and most importantly, actually writing it in your research paper or in your thesis, then in this video, I want to show you how it's actually done and how to properly express the research gap in your paper. Because I think too many people overcomplicate things in YouTube videos. Too many supervisors really overcomplicate things, but a research gap doesn't have to be that complex, but the way you express it is of vital importance. I myself have had my paper rejected last year because of the way the research gap was presented. Not so much because of the strength of the research gap, but just because how I wrote it just didn't convey that importance of my topic, and it wasn't clear why I was doing what I was doing and why this thing was actually important. And I don't want you to have your papers rejected. So we're going to look at an example from a research paper and discuss how to properly express a research gap. So let's dive right in. And just one thing before we do that, if you're new here and you're wondering who I am, my name is Marek Kiczkowiak and I run Academic English Now, where we help PhD students and researchers regularly publish research papers in top journals in the field. And if you're enjoying this video, hit the like, the subscribe button so you don't miss future videos. So let's look at some examples from real published papers from different disciplines to see how the researchers express the research gap, what types of research gaps they use, and also importantly, what language they use in order to do that correctly, right? So here we've got a paper from medicine, and there's a couple of different types of research gaps in here. So first, we've got a research gap to do with sort of a lack of knowledge about a specific topic. In other words, studies have been conducted about this topic, but little is known about something, right? So maybe, some studies have got positive results, others have got negative, and therefore, little is known or it is still unclear, right? So this is a very common phrase. Little is known, however, about, that you might want to use in your paper, right? A similar thing to that, and also about the same research gap, lack of knowledge, lack of consensus, it is not clear whether. A very commonly used phrase to indicate that, we lack some knowledge about a topic, right? And then, the author mentions the methods that were used in previous studies, and then points out the limitation of that method, right? It was not generally possible to, and then we've got a limitation of those previous studies, right? So that's kind of a second type of research gap. So notice that the author combines two types of research gap to make, the statement stronger, right? And also then notice how the aim fits perfectly like a glove with the previously explained research gaps, right? It just, it addresses the limitations and it addresses the lack of knowledge, both of which were used as the research gap. So this is also something that you need to make sure of. Now, another type of research gap is just a lack of studies or lack of knowledge, right? So in this case, we've got, processing intensity has not yet been included as a variable, right? So there is a lack of studies on this particular topic, right? And so far, studies have focused on this different thing, right? And then we've got an explanation why what we want to study is an important thing to study, right? So lack of studies is another example, and a common phrase to use is something like has not yet been, included as a variable, has not yet been studied, has not yet been addressed, right? These are some common phrases that you can use to talk about lack of research, right? In here, there's a similar type of research gap. It's just here in the first sentence, right? It's a very common structure of a sentence when you want to talk about the research gap, right? So we've got a sentence starting with while to introduce contrast, right? So while, a lot of research on X, Y, and Z has been carried out, right? This one thing in here, its receptor, was never characterized, right? So I'll repeat that again because it's just a very common phrasing when you talk about research gaps. So you can use while or although X, Y, and Z have been studied in the literature, and then you introduce the research gap. X has not been focused on, or something like this, or there are few studies on, and then you introduce the research gap. So in here, what we've got again, is a word for contrast, like nevertheless. You can also use however, because previously we've been discussing the literature, right? And now we're introducing contrast. We said all these things have been done. Nevertheless, we've got only 4 studies on this particular topic. And there is a problem with those studies, right? There's a limitation of those studies, right? That they were just conducted in a specific context, right? And then, there is a sort of another limitation of previous studies, or a lack of knowledge. Like previous research does not explain why, right? So we still don't know something. There's a lack of knowledge. And again, notice here, like in the first example that we saw here, how the writer combines, 2 different types of a research gap together in order to make the claim and to better justify the aim. Now, if you want more personalized help writing an excellent PhD thesis or research papers, then schedule a free one-to-one consultation. The link is right below this video. We're going to go over your biggest challenges, identify your goals, and then also give you a personalized action plan that will help you to achieve those goals faster. And then if it sounds like it's a good fit, we can talk about a little bit more about what working together would look like. And the link to that free one-to-one consultation is right below this video.